Well, we're just about 5 minutes past. Do you want to go ahead and
Yeah, we're close enough. So many of you probably know Hayley. She's head of our marketing, and she's been around TouchPoint pretty much forever. So you've met her at Summit, you've seen her on various leadership webinars, roundtables, all those kinds of things. I'm Matt. Some people call me Matt, and I'm a volunteer coordinator here at TouchPoint. Been with TouchPoint for about a year and a half, and I'm excited to um, be a little bit of the visionary, while Hayley's a little more of the application side of today's webinar.
you
So,
just
yeah.
correct it? I think you
Oh,
said you're a volunteer coordinator, but
oh, did I? See, I'm just so excited to talk about
talk about
volunteers. I'm a
volunteers.
marketing coordinator. Yeah, and I'm not volunteer based. I do, yes, this is my real hair. Yes, I'm gainfully employed at TouchPoint. So, all right, well, let's get focused on why we're really here. We just like to have a scriptural foundation when we do these. And just looking at Colossians 3:23 through 24, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. Since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward, it is the Lord Christ you are serving. And so, just that context of when we're talking about volunteers, when we're talking about the volunteer journey and discipleship, it's not for recognition, right? It's not for anything self-seeking. It is for God. It is for the kingdom. So whether that's from the staff member side and what you guys do on the daily in ministry, or as you guys are encouraging volunteers to be fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ, this is our scriptural foundation that we are called to work for the Lord and expand the kingdom. So, our agenda today, we're going to go through the volunteer journey. That's the chunk of it. We're going to talk about preventing burnout, and then have a little time for Q&A. Just point of clarity, the chat is for like fun, light conversation, things like that. But if you have a question, please pop that in the Q&A so we can keep track of that and we can make sure we respond to that. We may be a little wordy. I can be kind of chatty from time to time. So if we go long, we want to make sure we can capture those Q&A questions and email you if you have a specific question. And that's also why we brought Wizard Will here behind the curtain, who may or may not chime in on the Q&A. And then we have a couple of announcements for you. Um, so at the end of the day, why are two marketing people talking about volunteering? Well, first, Hayley has a wealth of experience from a touchpoint standpoint. She used to lead our training department, and so she is very familiar with the ins and outs and applications of how you can guide volunteers through the journey within Touchpoint. Me, I'm a former small group director, database administrator, and productions coordinator. Anybody, many hats in ministry? Anybody preach? Can I get an amen in the chat if anyone wants to do that? But as part of that database administration, I obviously have my hands in the volunteer process a lot. And so not just, yeah, there's Mary, not just, from the database side, but also from the people side and casting vision. So that's kind of our qualifications. We hope that you see this as an inspiration, as in your discipleship and engagement efforts, that maybe we give you an extra tool in your tool belt that you can use as you're trying to guide volunteers through the journey and maybe try some new things. So let's launch the volunteer journey. There's 7 steps. I know that sounds like a lot, so I'm going to talk really fast. That's why we're recording this. But again, the goal is from first interest to long-term engagement. And so my question for today is, where are you leading people, right? So in each step of the volunteer journey, are you leading them to their next step, their next faith step, from awareness all the way through what we call reevaluation? And we'll get to that at the end. Okay. So just keep that in mind. Where are you leading people to? So let's look a little bit at awareness, right? Who are we talking about here? When we're trying to create awareness within the volunteer journey, we're talking about people who are not regularly serving. We're talking about people who maybe have served in the past and aren't, who are underserving. We're talking about the ministry areas in need, right? We want to create awareness, whether it's in your children's ministry or your production ministry or your parking lot ministry. You want specific targeted call to actions in order for it to like perk people's ears up, right? It's not just about plugging warm bodies in, right? You want to make sure that in that awareness, you're starting kind of that campaign of volunteer push well before you need them for a big event like Easter or Christmas or a VBS, because you're going to need to get them trained and onboarded and all those kinds of things. And the why behind it, I mean, you can't and probably shouldn't just keep hiring more staff to fill in all the gaps, right? That's just, it's not realistic. And so we need them as staff members, as former staff member, we need our volunteers because we can't be everywhere all at once. And so it's also not just about that, but it's about their faith journey. It's better for them to give than to receive, to give back to the church and the kingdom of God. And so we don't want to rob them of the opportunity to grow in their discipleship, right? So how are we going to do that? We're going to talk about that, today, but plan, invite people, re-invite people. A call to action from the stage, from the pulpit, is highly effective. Personal invitations from your ministry leaders to their communities and connections, right? The people that are kind of like hiding in the shadows, but if your ministry leaders know them, a personal invitation goes a long way. Hayley, you got some tips and tricks for us as well?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think you just mentioned a great one, like mentioning it from the stage. We've got a few just easy ways to get the word out that you need help right here. We're going to talk in a few minutes about communicating with those who have served in the past and who also may already have a background check that's approved. But right now, we're just talking about getting the attention of those who have not served yet, we'll say. So you see here post signs on classroom doors, put them in the hallways, put them on the check-in station. So wherever parents might see them as they're, walking through the halls and getting their kids to class. One thing that I've seen Bellevue do, so Will and I, in our family go to Bellevue and we see these cute little posters that have like this precious little child's face. It's like, do you want to be my teacher? And I love it. And so, that's one way to tug at the heartstrings, right? To get those signs out there. Include calls to action in emails. So whether it's a newsletter email, a ministry specific email, event invitations, we have what we call like free touches. So confirmation emails, contribution statements. So those free touches, you can include a little message in there and, a button, just some sort of call to action. So they're seeing it and thinking about it more often. Again, at Bellevue, every Sunday when we pick up our kids, they've got little bags that we love to look in and, has some papers about what they learned that day. And of course, the artwork, the beautiful things that they've created in class. But also, that's a great opportunity to put a flyer in or a little postcard in. If we're needing more help, that's, parents are going to get get those papers. Of course, these are a little bit more passive in the ways of getting the word out. But if we want to be more intentional or more targeted, I guess I'll say, with identifying folks that may be ready to start serving, we can use Search Builder and we can find members very easily with Search Builder. And we can find those who have never been part of a serving involvement. And so we're going to talk about Search Builder in a few minutes, and we'll talk about a way that we can easily, search by that specific type of involvement. But that will allow us to take more personalized approach and give that, personalized invitation for those that are looking to take the next step.
Yeah, I love that. And not that I want to like step on toes, but when Hayley and I were talking about this earlier, finding people that have never served before or who are members who have never served before, and maybe they're already givers or tithers, or maybe they're also involved in a small group. So that they're a part of your church and your community, and it's just inviting them to their next faith step, right? And that's just part of creating awareness. The answer is no if you don't ask. Right. Like at the end of the day, if you don't ask your congregation to help you with these things, the answer is no. So that being said, as we kind of transition into step 2 of the volunteer journey, and that's interest, when you have an effective call to action, right? Whether it's from the pulpit or an email or anything else, you need to have tight processes to capture that interest and then to be able to delegate and lighten the load, right? It's not all just supposed to go on to the database administrator. Maybe it gets funneled there initially, and then it becomes like volunteer triage, right? You're assessing a person based off of maybe the information that they provided, their serving ability, how often they want to serve, their giftedness, the area that they want to serve, their passions, things like that. And you're trying to move them along to get them to their next step, to get them connected to a ministry leader. And this isn't just about, I said it earlier, finding warm bodies and plugging them in. It's finding the right fit within ministry, because if you're just plugging people in anywhere without identifying them, eventually you're probably going to lose them, right? They're going to get frustrated, or the ministry leader is going to get frustrated, and none of us want that, right? So we want to make sure we put the right person in the right ministry, and it really comes down to fit. Just taking the step back a little bit, I have a little bit of business experience, and for those of you that know, is it harder to gain a new customer or retain a current customer, right? It's harder to gain a new customer. So keeping that in mind, that volunteer's experience is vital to their overall and long-term success, right? You may have to have a little bit of hand-holding to ensure longevity, right? You may have to pivot from time to time, moving them to different ministry areas if something's not a good fit. But if you're intentional and you're relational, and you even remind yourself what it was like the first time you served decades ago, right? When you first joined a church and you said, I'm going to start serving, like what was that feeling like? And just take that into consideration when it comes to, okay, they're interested, now what? So now what? Like, Hayley, how do we do that in TouchPoint?
All right. I'm glad you asked. Uh, we are now going to talk about the process involved in becoming a volunteer. So we're going to talk about the application itself first. So the first step is setting up an interest-based recruitment system using registration forms. And so we can see a screenshot of a sample form here. And, for those of you who may not know, registration forms allow us to create drop-down options. And so, for example, we've got some options here that are asking about, areas of interest for serving and serve experience, availability. So we can inquire about anything that would be helpful for us in evaluating, if this person is a good fit. I also mentioned next steps on the screen here because this is also a good time. So whether it's on the form itself or perhaps it's better in the confirmation email, but we just want to make sure that we are communicating expectations regarding next steps, because especially if after the form gets submitted and there's like a 2-week wait where they might not hear anything for a while, it's a good idea to go ahead and let them know that there's going to be a bit of silence, until the next step. As we are building the registration form, drop-down options can be saved as either subgroups or as individual involvement. So whichever works better for your internal processes. I personally just usually go the subgroup route. And one thing I will mention regarding subgroups, for TouchPoint's reporting, whenever we create those subgroups for a particular question, we want to make sure that we put a prefix. So for all of the answers or all the subgroup options that are associated with one particular question, assign it with the same prefix. And that's the reason is because with our reporting, most of the reports have the answers or the subgroups listed in alphabetical order. So at least if you've got that prefix there, then all of those answers pertaining to that particular question are all going to be grouped together. I had to learn that the hard way a few years ago. So I just always make sure to, point that out whenever I'm talking about subgroups from registration reports. So while we are creating our registration, we can also incorporate spiritual giftedness into the process. And we have an integration with a company called Points North Systems and Shape Data. So you can see Shape down there, giftedness assessment. And so it allows the applicants to take the spiritual gift assessment and their results will automatically be pulled into TouchPoint, and the results will appear as extra values on their people record. So there's only a little bit of setup that's required, but the integration is already there. It's ready to go. And if you want to learn more about it, you can look at a help article called Shape Data.
And how would you say is the best practice maybe to have kind of that step? Is this included in the registration form? Is this like another step in the process, or what would you recommend for that?
So to answer your question, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next thing, and that's process
Oh,
builder.
lovely.
Perfect segue. Thanks for setting me up. So I think it depends on the church's process. So, for some churches, they might have the spiritual gift assessment come after a background check, or, for some churches, they maybe just different teams or different areas of serving might not even need, background checks or require background checks. And so then the assessment could, happen shortly thereafter, the initial application. So what we're looking at here, we can see this is a screenshot of Process Builder. So Process Builder is, just allowing us to easily keep track of those that are in the volunteer process. And so we put little stars here next to these particular processes that are related to, volunteering. So children's ministry background checks. This one might be more loosely Connect Card follow-up, mission trip application process, serving interest. But I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. And so this is what we see as, a screenshot of a particular process, so the volunteer process. For the SHAPE data assessment, we need to send them a link to take the assessment. And so that can come as a step in the process. We could create a step here within this volunteer process that the action is to send an email. And once they finish, let's, say, once the background check has been approved, if we want to add that next step in here and say, send an email, and then, you can go ahead and draft the email so it knows what email to send. And then you include that link in there, and they'll go ahead and take the link. Then automatically, again, the results are going to get added to their people record as extra values. So yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, pretty straightforward. One thing that I do want to mention while we're talking here, we see it says SearchMed. And so I talked a minute ago about creating those registrations and either having the drop downs saved as subgroups or as individual involvements. Both of those can be, you can pull that information from Search Builder, which then feeds into Process Builder. And so that's the beauty of saving that information is either a subgroup or an individual involvement. Then it becomes a safe search that helps you kickstart your process. But Process Builder has a lot of capabilities, and it partners really well with registration forms.
Nice. So we've gathered that interest and we start assessing people. So now it's time to onboard, right? It's time to, train them, get them built up, right? And make sure that they're a good fit, get feedback from the ministry leader. Your church may have a class that you want them to take. You may want them to be a member first, like all these kinds of things. Background check, you may want that on the interest form, or maybe that's part of the onboarding process, right? It just kind of depends, but hammering out those details and then where they fit into the steps is important. Do you guys do shadowing? Right? Do you have some new volunteer shadow kind of an experienced volunteer, just so they don't have all the pressure of, volunteering on a Sunday and feeling alone, but they can kind of ask questions and see how the rhythms go. Again, it goes down into clear expectations. Hayley talked about it a little bit ago. What's dress code? How do they communicate to their ministry leader? What tools do they use for that? How do they block out dates? Just those kinds of things. What to do if they see a safety concern, right? Who do they reach out to as they're volunteering? And then if it comes down to shadowing or anything else through the interest or the onboarding process, if that particular area of ministry isn't a good fit, then pivot elsewhere, right? There's a place for them in the body to use their gifts and talents. And so, okay, it didn't work out here, and that's fine. We're going to lead you to your next step, which is going to be this area. We're going to try this out, right? So setting the culture of serving at your church, how you handle obstacles can show the volunteer journey is often like our faith journey, right? It's not perfect, but it's definitely rewarding. So Hayley, give us a couple of practical tips, TouchPoint onboarding style.
Okay. And yes, we're going to move into the background check, but I wanted to mention too, as you were just talking about, um, you know, things that we can be doing, as part of this process. A lot of what I was hearing was, these are a lot of the tasks that ministry leaders can be assigned or assigning, people
Mm,
inside of, Process Builder, and say,
yeah.
just to make sure that nothing is falling through the cracks and that everything is being communicated. Those can all be individual steps inside of Process Builder. So, again, we're, practically speaking, inside of Touchpoint, the volunteers are still moving along their process in Process Builder. So, talking about background checks, um, we have two integrations with, we have one with Protect My Ministry and Ministry Safe. We can submit these background checks inside of Touchpoint, check, the reports to see if it's been approved or not. If you don't work with either one of them, these are wonderful partners. They have great resources. So I definitely encourage y'all to check them out. And if you can, use those QR codes, check out the links. I think that there's a discount that's offered. If I'm not mistaken, I think it might be with Ministry
Ministry
Safe.
Safe.
Ministry Safe. Okay, yeah. So definitely use that link because on that page they tell you that there's a discount code. Um, so we definitely encourage you to get connected with them. We've also got some search builder conditions regarding background checks, so that way it can let you know if a background check is expiring soon. Um, Check-in labels and profile rings. So many churches also have their volunteers check in at a check-in station. And so we can include icons on their label. And, we've got like check marks. You can do a heart or something else entirely. But you can use those icons to indicate one of two things. You can say, okay, the background check is expired, or they're good to go. So it could be, whichever way you want to use those icons. And then similarly, we have profile rings. So if you haven't looked at the profile rings, again, great security feature. And we're actually going to be talking more about profile rings in a touch pointer coming up in April. But profile rings, can allow us to indicate that the background check is current or expired. Again, whichever way we want to take that. And it can also be used to communicate information to the volunteers if you want to, go that route as well. Again, we're going to touch on that in a touch pointer.
Yeah, no, the profile ring application is actually pretty cool. I was talking to Nathan over at Bellevue, and when you're talking about, we serve some of the largest churches in the country, and so are all your volunteers going to know each other? And the reality is probably not. So, if you need every volunteer to have a background check and to have like a ministry safe training. Bellevue has two different colors, one for background check and one for ministry safe training. So even if you don't know the volunteer that's checking in that day, and when they, type in their number or whatever, like, oh, they have both rings. Okay, you're good to go. Nice to meet you. Thank you for helping us serve. And so it's just a really fun, simple application that you can use profile rings.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so we are moving on to training. Matt mentioned a minute ago that volunteers also need training. So in addition to signing someone up to have their background check process, we can also indicate that we want them to receive training through Ministry Safe. So that's one type of training that they might receive. And then similarly, we can set up status flags, badges, profile rings, and then the icons that go along with that to correspond with the training, just the same way as the background checks. I'm not going to park on this slide for too long. It just serves as a quick reminder to keep communications flowing, to ensure that potential volunteers stay engaged. Our applicants, they are still in the process. And part of the process can include email and text message communication. So, first and foremost, we've got that confirmation email, just as a result of a successful application submission. And again, great opportunities to set expectations there. But beyond that, emails and text messages, they can be triggered, as they move through the process, just to update the volunteers as to where they are currently and what's happening next. And so, we work with both Powered by Text and Twilio. We have integrations with them. So, of course, be sure to check them out if you aren't using TouchPoint for texting and are interested in doing so.
Yeah, I just love the clear communication, even something as simple as on a confirmation email, again, what can they expect, right? You're leading them to their next step. Maybe it's confirming their availability, when their first Sunday serving is going to be, those kinds of things, how to log into the system and do that. So kind of pivoting on to our volunteer journey, we're moving on into engagement. And so I just want to encourage you, clear and concise and consistent communication just shows respect and honoring for their time, for their energy, for their willingness to serve the church. Just consider a balance of how many automated reminders that you guys have set up in your system versus, kind of like the tests and notes, and how often do you want to do touch bases and stuff like that, and keeping them engaged, that they don't feel like they were franchised, right? Okay, you got our brand on a stamp of approval. Now go be successful. Like, no, you're a part of the body of Christ together. You're communicating. This is an ongoing thing. And so also, hey, recognize that not everybody wants automated reminders all the time. So if you hear that feedback, being ready to let them know, hey, if you'd like to turn this off, this is how you can maybe limit the amount of communication, but we just want to make sure that we we appreciate you, and you're just keeping people engaged. So,
Yeah. All right. So, practically speaking, once they are past the initial vetting process, and one thing that we can do is get volunteers organized on a volunteer scheduler. So, scheduler has tremendous versatility. One scheduler can be used for a single area, such as, the entire children's ministry. It can be used by multiple areas, which is what we see here, greeters and ushers, for worship service. We can organize teams and subgroups in a way, that just best suits your church. There's a lot of flexibility for those. You've got, capability for recurring events like worship service, or standalone events as well. And it allows, once we set up the teams and the schedules, then the volunteers can sign up and manage their commitments themselves. One thing that I think is really great is that we can also require certain, I'll just say, experience. So if there's like, I'll just use the word prerequisites. If there's something that needs to be done in order for something to be able to sign up on a particular team, we can put that restriction in place so that not everyone is able to just sign up, to be the lead vocalist, for example. So we put something in place where it's limited. Not me.
Just kidding.
But also, one thing that's great about Scheduler is that we can easily communicate with those from within the scheduler involvement. So if we want to email everyone who is serving on a particular team, we can do that. We can email everyone that is committed to serving on that day, or everyone that's in the involvement itself. So the, entire scheduler involvement. So lots of flexibility with communications. And another great tool is Search Builder. And so we hinted at it, kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but it gives us a lot of flexibility for identifying individuals who maybe have served in the past. So you can see a sample search that we pulled here. And so we want to identify those who have served, in the last 365 days. So we can see I've got the time frame set to 365 days. And one thing that, this church does is they have their involvement type for any serving involvements. They have them the involvement type as serve in. So that allows us to easily say, okay, I want to see anybody who is a member of this serve in involvement in the last 365 days. And then we also added a second condition to see when the last, background check was approved. And so we've got the approval status set there. As long as the background checks are still current, once we have our list, then we may want to go ahead and send out an invitation to get them on our scheduler.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just to kind of go back on being able to communicate to everybody who's serving on a given day, like that's a really cool application just as far as like, hey, Easter's coming up, right? And you want to send an encouraging text to every single volunteer for Easter, right? And so pulling those IDs and setting it up that way that morning, like everybody has a scripture on their mind. They're bringing their A game. They're excited and they're pumped up to serve all of your new and first time guests. There's a lot of, I'm a report junkie. So anytime you show me this kind of stuff, I just get really excited about it.
Yeah. There might be one more thing for me. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but it's just such a great tool for staff to stay engaged with their volunteers or potential volunteers. So I didn't want to move on without mentioning the mobile app. We're looking at tasks and notes from within the app, and so we can use tasks and notes to complete those ministry touches that we talked about. As we're encouraging people to stay engaged. This is a great way to do it on the go.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know I'm a little wordy. I warned you ahead of time, but we will get to some more Q&A. Our wizard is definitely answering on the Q&A as well. So we got a couple more steps. Continuous development, number 5, right? Look for opportunities to cross-train and give more responsibility where it makes sense, right? And so whether you want to implement tasks and notes, reminders of a 30, 60, 90-day check-in, or maybe have a follow-up training available, something like that to just show like, this isn't just a one and done, like, and maybe there's even a refresher training. Like if you've been serving for 2 years, but you haven't taken our serve class in the last 24 months, we want you to come and just get a little refresher on what it means to serve here at our church. Is there a leadership pathway available, right? If they're interested. I worked at Starbucks for 7.5 years, and whether, there were baristas and shifts and managers, some people just want to be a barista, and that's okay, right? But other people want to kind of move up and they have greater gifts and they want to continue to pour those into your church, right? And so have a pathway in mind for them. One other thing that I always highly recommend is, can you plug a volunteer into a place where a staff member normally serves? A high-level volunteer, right? It's going to take a little bit of a learning curve, but can you cross-train? If we're telling our congregation, we need you, and then we just end up putting staff everywhere, then eventually they don't believe us, right? Eventually they're like, no, they don't need us. Look at the staff. They're so great, all this other kind of stuff. If you're going to have that call to action of we need you, try to get some more flexibility. That way you can, when things come up, people get sick, you can move people around. So cross-training is highly recommended. Step 6. Celebrating your volunteers, right? They did it, they're approved, they're serving. You're continuing a culture of honor through congratulating them. Maybe when they first start serving, you give them a piece of church swag, right? It's like, hey, this is your first serve day. Like, here's some church swag. Maybe it's a coffee coupon, or, get a free drink on us or something like that. I was a part of a men's ministry that they would always get around, like all the staff for this men's ministry, and they would say how many times they've served in this ministry. And whenever they got to a newbie and they said, oh, this is my first time, the whole circle would just like, yeah, woo. And it just created this really great energy and environment of culture of honoring one another, right? There are simple things like a handwritten card, maybe a gift card signed by the staff when somebody's gone above and beyond. Celebrating milestones, birthdays, anniversaries. I mean, we have this information in TouchPoint, right? And so if you want to have like a little birthday widget or something like that for your serve teams, like that's just a really great way. It's on Facebook. Let's just put it on TouchPoint, right? Let's just have it come from us, right? You can also do a volunteer spotlight on social media where, hey, this is our volunteer of the week or volunteer of the month, and this is where they serve, and this is what they're passionate about. And then that turns into a little bit of a volunteer flywheel, right? Where you put out something really easy and honest and inviting. People start getting to know who your volunteers are. And then the people who are kind of sitting in the back are like, hey, I want to volunteer, right? Like, that sounds awesome. It's impacted their life in this way. You could do a volunteer testimony video. And then the volunteer appreciation event, right? Whether that's yearly or bi-yearly, looking for an opportunity for the staff to serve the volunteers. Maybe you cater it, something like that. You do a fun variety show. It should be a time of honoring, have fun awards for your volunteers, like the Cal Ripken Award for the person who never takes a day off, whatever that might be. Make it fun, okay? Step seven, reevaluate, okay? You get all the way through, you're dealing with people, changes happen, life happens. Check in on your volunteers. How are they doing? What do they like? What do they dislike? Do they want to serve more? Do they want to serve less? Do they have feedback on the process? Do they need a break? A break is okay, right? For a season. Life happens. I have 2 little girls. I've had to take breaks and give myself the grace for that. So we want to give our volunteers grace for that. And if you're overstaffed in one area and you reevaluate and somebody's cross-trained, you may be able to move them right into another ministry area. It's time to send them back to step 4, right? So as you reevaluate, you want to re-engage, you want to develop, you want to celebrate, and then you kind of get them in this little cycle. And when you have them there, that's really the sweet spot of retention. So our bonus step in the volunteer journey is not really a step, right? But when we're talking about retention, preventing burnout, keeping volunteers engaged long term, here's common challenges you guys have all experienced, right? People feel like a number. They're scheduled too much. They're burnt out. There's a lack of growth or purpose, right? We talked about the importance of kind of a leadership pipeline within your volunteer process. Poor communication. Hayley talked about that. No clear next steps. What is their next faith step? Are they interested in taking another step, right? And so just a couple of things to prevent burnout is mandated days off. You may have to save a volunteer from themselves, right? They serve every single weekend. They serve multiple services. You just love and appreciate them. The joy of the Lord is their strength, which is awesome. And they need to rest, right? So whether that's once a month or every other month, like intentionally not schedule them and say, we just want you to participate. We just want you to worship, right? It may look like giving all the ladies' Mother's Days off and all the guys' Father's Day off, if you can do that, right? Just in a sense of what are the ways that you can say, hey, we see you. We recognize that you are giving of your time, treasure, and talents, right, for the kingdom of God. And we want you not just for the next year to be doing this. We want you to have a culture of serving for all of your life. We don't want to take advantage of that emotionally. And so having those open channels of communication in honor and respect is really important for that. So we've had a couple of Q&A questions come through. Keep them coming through. Looks like our master, Willie Whitworth, has definitely answered a couple of these. Hayley, did you want to... See, you're going to be more technical than me, so I'm going to ask this question from Courtney. Are there resources for how to set up automated text message reminders for the scheduler?
I'm going to have to look into that after.
Okay.
Because right now, I don't think that text messaging is configured with scheduler.
Okay.
But I do want to confirm that. Yeah, actually, that was just confirmed.
And it's not currently.
Yeah.
Not currently. Okay.
Yeah. I do see one from Courtney that I would like clarification on. So would love more resources or tips on how to use Search Builder for those who are signing up for spots in different schedulers. So Courtney, are you asking about just identifying those who may be in multiple scheduler involvements? And is that like your, what are you wanting to be notified of that? I'm just wanting a little bit more clarity on that question.
Well, we're waiting for that clarity. We're coming up on time. We want to honor your time, right? We agreed to 45 minutes together, and we have hit that. So the small group director in me is saying, if you need to go, there's no shame in going. You can go. That's okay. But if you want to stick around, and we just have a couple more questions that we'll try to answer. If you have a Q&A, pop that in. We'll make sure to email you back if we don't get to it today. And then we have some announcements and stuff. So I just want to honor and respect your time as well. So don't feel obligated. I won't shame you.
There is one thing that I wanted to also share that just in case it might be a good resource for folks. And so this is the small group finder. So it kind of came as, as a result of a conversation Matt and I were having earlier. And I was like, oh, I just want to make sure to cover this. So, as we're talking about, getting the word out about your volunteer options and serving opportunities, this is a small group finder that, allows us to say, okay, where do you want to serve? Is it at the church or is it out in the community? And how much time do you want to spend on this? And, what spiritual gift? So, for instance, if we select something, then the map updates and, then we've got the list of the involvements that someone can apply to. Or submit their application for. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that is one option to promote the, different areas, that's different serving opportunities.
Yeah. I love that one.
I think because we are over on time, I think we might need to move on, and we do see your questions, and we're going to be sending out follow-up emails.
These get saved, I promise. So Mary, Hannah, Courtney, we got your back. We're gonna ping you. We're gonna reach out to you about your questions, okay? I promise.
All right. So a couple of announcements. Our training team would love to hear from you. So if you've used training resources, please take a few minutes and complete the survey. So you've got a QR code here, a link, if you'd rather type it in. But we want to make sure that our training resources are valuable. And so your feedback just helps us to continue to improve that. And as a thank you for your time, everybody that does complete this short survey is going to be entered into a drawing for a chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card. The survey is open now, and it closes on Friday, April 11th. So a little over 2 weeks to get that done. And Summit, that I cannot let a webinar go by without mentioning Summit. So the Summit landing page has been updated with all the details on accommodations. We've got 4 hotels to choose from this year, which we are really excited about. We've got an agenda up. It may change a little bit. It's a little bit of wet cement, but for the most part, a good agenda is in there. And we've got the FAQs in there. We are working hard to finalize the sessions and the networking schedule. So we will get that information added in soon. But we're really focusing on getting those sessions in there, because I know that's something that y'all always email us and ask us about to see when we've got that finalized. And if you have any questions, send us an email at summit.touchpointsoftware.com.
And as a bonus, I will finally be there this year. So, I mean, I know I'm just a really big draw. So make sure you register today.
Register his email.
Be there. Yeah.
Yeah. April is all check check-in. So we've got our roundtable on April 15th at 2:00. And our webinar is changing times on you next month. It's just for next month. But we are going to be at 10 a.m. on the 24th. Instead of our usual afternoon time, we're going to be at 10 a.m. on the 24th. So we're going to send links out soon so that y'all can go ahead and register and officially put it on your calendar. But at least if you want to make a mental note now, those are the dates and times.
Awesome. So we just want to bookend this with some scripture. I just want to encourage you guys, staff members, you guys are on the front lines of ministry. every day. I mean, you really are. And for a lot of you, your phones and your emails are just always on. So I want to encourage you, yes, to do the good work the Lord has placed before you, and also to give yourself some grace and take rest. But do not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up, right? And there's a great harvest coming for sure. Ben Swaby reminded me that, for some of you on this call, the real work doesn't begin until after Easter, right? So you're doing all this cultivating and preparing, and the harvest is coming, right? And so I just want to encourage you to don't stop doing what God has placed in front of you. He's positioned you in this time, in this season for a reason. And it's going to be a great Easter in 2025. I truly believe that. So I just want to thank you guys for coming, for listening to my first tenor, second alto voice for about 30 to 45 minutes with Hayley. And I hope you guys just have a blessed day. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.